Hello everyone, welcome to the podcast. Today we are going to discuss about the Gen AI secret that everyone's hiding from you. We all know that trillions of dollars are being poured into artificial intelligence. Companies are chasing Gen AI like it's the next gold rush. So, from automating documents to writing code and analyzing customer data, the promise is endless. But here's the truth, while the software gets all the attention, the real cost and the real barrier lies elsewhere. I can see organizations are buying licenses but skipping the hard parts, that is, change management, upskilling, governance, and process reengineering. So in this episode, we broke down why GenAI is failing to deliver at scale. Not because the tech isn't powerful, but because most companies aren't prepared to use it responsibly or effectively. So let us dig into the GenAI truth that nobody wants to talk about and what you do to need if you want your investment to actually pay off. So on this excellent topic we are going to discuss today, we have an eminent guest, Scott, who is having lots of experience in the area of artificial intelligence and data science, who is presently working as a co-instructor for artificial intelligence in the University of Pennsylvania. He has done excellent job in the area of artificial intelligence. He was a lead artificial intelligence solution architect, lead data scientist, vice president of data science. So he has done excellent roles in his career. So we are really thankful to have you, Scott, here. And I request all the viewers to watch the video till the end, because this podcast is going to give you real insights about the current status of GenAI. And if you really like the video, please like, comment, and share this video and subscribe to my channel. So on this positive note, I want to hand over to Scott. So Scott, can you please introduce yourself? First of all, I want to thank you for accepting my invitation and joining this session. So can you please introduce to my audience about yourself?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talking about something that I think is really important and I think is not being covered nearly as much as it should be. Yes, my name is T. Scott Clendaniel. I have been involved in artificial intelligence for way too long. Or in other words, my dirty secret is the fact that I am older than dirt. So I just passed my 39th anniversary in this field. I actually started in March of 1986. So I actually started before most of your audience was born. So that's embarrassing but true. So I've been involved in the field in all sorts of different types of roles. I've been a practitioner. I have been in the IT side. I've been on the client side. I've been a consultant. I've been a teacher. I've been a mentor. I have been a coder, although not a very good one, I will admit. I've been a systems architect. I've been a database administrator. I have been on the strategy side. I've been on the implementation side. So I've seen this in lots of different formats. I've been through 2 AI winters, neither one of which was very pleasant. And I've seen a lot of hype that's come through over the years, but I have never seen anything that compares to the hype that's been generated through generative AI. And I wanted to point out something that you laid out in your introduction that is an extremely important analogy. You were talking about the gold rush. One of the things a lot of people don't realize in terms of the gold rush that happened for California was that the folks who made the money in the gold rush really weren't so much the prospectors. The people who made the real money in the gold rush were the people who sold the picks, the shovels, the buckets, and one company in particular was Levi Strauss, the people who made the blue jeans. They were the ones who made the real money. Most of the people who went out to stake the claims and to try to dig for gold ended up losing an incredible amount of money. The folks who made the money were the folks who said, hey, you're going to go and make all this money through the gold rush, eh? Well, I've got all these amazing supplies for you that you really need to buy. Those are the folks who cleaned up. And that's what's really happening within the Gen AI industry. The folks who are making money from generative AI are the folks who are selling the Gen AI software, the folks who are selling the Gen AI tools, the folks who are selling all of the capacity for Gen AI. I spent probably the past 18 months or so doing a lot of consulting for very large firms. And it's almost been like a trail of tears for very large organizations and IT directors coming to me. And the situation sort of goes like this. I've had IT directors come to me and they would say, look, 18 months ago, the board of directors would come to me and say, you've got to do Gen AI and you've got to do it now. And if you don't do it now, we're going to, drum roll please, for the magic phrase, we're going to fall behind. Now, they're not really specific in terms of what fall behind meant or fall behind who or exactly how, but if you don't do it now, we're going to fall behind. Now, most IT directors are really smart people, and they would look out at the landscape and they'd say, look, we're not really finding the use cases where generative AI is really going to provide us a lot of ROI. So we're not sure this is such a great idea. And the board or the president or whoever would say, no, you've got to do it right now. Go out and do a ton of Gen AI. And the IT director says, okay, I think it's a terrible idea, but since you're giving me no choice, I will go out and we will launch these initiatives. So almost holding their nose, they would go out and they would launch these Gen AI projects. 18 months now comes around, and most of the projects were failures. They weren't able to launch them, or if they did launch them, they weren't seeing any returns, or they weren't able to scale them. Lots of problems. All right. Now, also, the industry started to catch up. So if you'll remember, you had Goldman Sachs originally say that they thought that Gen AI was going to introduce 7 trillion with a T dollars boost to the economy. Well, last summer, I think it was last July, they came out and they said, you know what? It's not going to be $7 trillion. It might be $1 trillion. But if it is, we can't figure out what the product is going to be. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. This is Goldman Sachs, sort of the premier economic forecasters. And they're saying, we're admitting that we were wrong. And we weren't just kind of wrong. We were really, really wrong. We were off by a factor of 7. And we're not even sure that the 1 trillion is going to be right. And if it is right, we can't figure out what the product's going to be. This is a huge admission. That same month, you had the flash crash. I don't know if anyone remembers this, but the stock market took a 7% hit in a single day. What people don't talk about is that's because none of the companies who said we were going to get these huge earnings from generative AI hit. So the IT directors are also saying, this is kind of what we were worried about. All right. So now the CFOs of these same companies where the IT directors were saying this is a bad idea, the CFOs are now storming into those same IT directors' offices and say, what's going on? We're not having all these returns from generative AI. And the IT directors are going, whoa, 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 whoa. We told you that we thought that this was a terrible idea. And you said that I had to go ahead and do this anyway. Now the CFOs are saying, well, that's not exactly what we meant. And so the IT directors have been hit from both sides. First, they were told they had to do it when they said this was a bad idea. Now they're being held responsible for the very returns that the IT directors said they didn't think it was going to come. So if you're actually watching carefully, you'll see a lot of news reports coming out saying that 80 to 85% of GenAI initiatives are either failing completely, not able to scale, or not reaching the targets that were promised. That's a ridiculous failure rate. Now, you would think that because of all these failures, that the boards of directors and the presidents and CEOs would be saying, you know what, it's a bad idea, we should be pulling back. But that's not what's happening. And the reason why is the CEOs and the boards of directors promised all the shareholders that this was going to be the next revolution in business. So they've committed to the shareholders that there was going to be all the success. So the employees and the senior management knows that this is a terrible idea. But the CEOs and the boards are still pushing for these projects because they can't now go back to their shareholders and go, oops, we were wrong. So now there's this terrible problem. The companies and the people who actually need to implement and get these returns realize this is a terrible mistake, but they're still being forced to do them. And that's the secret that no one is telling you about GenAI. It looks impressive. On a personal level, you might be able to get a bunch of productivity out of it. Maybe not. Most organizations aren't seeing, even on a personal level, a lot of productivity. But the organizations from the top are still pushing these initiatives.
Yeah, that's good to know, Scott. So, you are the person who has seen AI from the beginning days. So now
When
you
I
are
was
seeing,
writing my dinosaur into work, yes, I saw AI from the beginning, yes.
yeah. So you are now seeing Gen AI. So what kind of transition you have seen all throughout these years, Scott? So what is your observation?
Well, what I'm really concerned about is that artificial intelligence as a whole is a lot more than generative AI, and that's what seems to be getting lost. So let's talk about the much broader scope, because it wasn't until 2022, November 30th, when ChatGPT 3.5 was launched that AI suddenly became generative AI and everyone lost everything. Machine learning goes back a long, long way before then. People forget that machine learning has been around for quite a while. So if you look back through time, Sears Roebuck, nobody remembers Sears anymore, but Sears went back into the 1800s and was the first large-scale catalog retailer, along with Montgomery Ward. And they were actually implementing machine learning with a technique called RFM, which was recency, frequency, monetary value, which was sort of a primitive approach to say, if I've got a customer who has purchased from my catalog in the past, if I just use those three indicators in a predictive model, I have a pretty good idea for estimating the lifetime value of that customer and how often I should be sending additional offers to that customer. Those techniques go back to the 1940s and was extremely successful. If you look at the history of credit scoring, that goes back to Fair Isaac and what we now call the FICO scores. That goes back to the 1950s. This isn't necessarily new, and it's been successful, wildly successful, going back for quite a long time. Those techniques still work incredibly well. I can show you use cases for machine learning that have returns on investment up to 1,200%. 1,200%. Now, you can do most of that stuff and have been able to do most of that stuff in Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. What other people aren't realizing is you can now natively embed Python in Microsoft Excel today, essentially for free, or put it in Google Sheets if you want. Or if you want to make it sort of dressed up a little bit, you can now put add-ins into either of those products so that you can put most of the power of machine learning into either of those products for close to free and get incredible returns on investment that you can deploy across your organization and get out of this Gen AI trap. Get amazing. You can be the star of your organization. You can be the superhero of your organization. You can have the virtual cape for your organization of using AI and avoid all of these traps for very little investment. Now, here's the kicker. If you still are bound and determined that you need to use generative AI one way or another, here's what you do. You use generative AI as the interface to these tools. So if nobody wants to learn code, or if macros are too difficult, use generative AI as the interface to these tools in Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets. So now you go back to the senior executives in the organization and say, you know what? Absolutely. We agree. Generative AI is amazing. And you just make it the interface to the standard machine learning tools so you can get away with saying, yes, Gen AI, absolutely. It's amazing, fantastic. But that's all you use it for. And you don't get caught in these boondoggles of these other types of projects. And that's how you get the ROI. That's how you get out of this trap.
That's really awesome, Scott. Now, we know that generative AI is incredibly popular and gaining even more popularity.
It is.
Why do you say it isn't living up to the expectations? So, you mentioned so many things in your initial pointers, the ROI, return on investment. Why do you think the failure is happening in terms of getting the ROI? So, what is the major problem that you have found, Scott?
A couple of things. First of all, it was a solution looking for a problem, meaning that it is a truly bright, shiny object and all the problems that come with a bright, shiny object. It is truly remarkable. It truly looks like magic. It is beautiful. It is impressive. I am fascinated and impressed by generative AI. And I want you to hear the right message. It is not that I say that generative AI is terrible and you should never use it. What I am saying is that I am a big believer in the right tool for the job. We haven't found the right tool for the job. The other thing is that its promises were way out of proportion for the use cases it was appropriate for. Because it was so magical in appearance, there was a huge mismatch between what it could do and what the expectations were. So I'm going to pick on Microsoft Copilot for a couple minutes to sort of illustrate this point. And I want to be really clear. I am a Microsoft child. Yes, I admit it. Everyone else flipped over to Apple 25 years ago, but I grew up on Microsoft, and in general, I am a Microsoft tool fan. So I'm using Copilot as an example because it's so ubiquitous, not because I'm anti-Microsoft. But when Microsoft was initially sold, It was argued that it was going to revolutionize personalized productivity. That was the sales pitch. Here's what happened. 2/3 of the people who requested a Copilot license, not who were assigned, who requested a Copilot license, never used it at all. 2/3. Those who did use it used it for approximately 6 weeks and gave up. If you did use it and you went past the 6 weeks, you could maybe come up with 2 use cases. 2. That's really not sustainable. And for those use cases, the use cases tended to be, it takes remarkable meeting summaries. Absolutely true. And the second use case was, it creates beautiful presentations. Also true. So now, as an organization, you have the ability to fire everyone in your organization who either has the job description of fantastic meeting notes summarizer or beautiful presentation maker. Now, I don't know about you, but I haven't worked in any organization that has a lot of people with either of those job descriptions. So, if I'm going to look at profitability or ROI, I've got revenue and expense before. I've got revenue and expense after. So if I'm looking at before Copilot and after Copilot, it hasn't changed because I haven't let anybody go, right? But I have now doubled, all right, it's actually 87% more expensive for the software. It isn't exactly double. But I haven't saved any money and I haven't increased any revenue. So even fundamentally, this didn't work. Now, what Microsoft used to say is, no, you're looking at this all wrong because your productivity is going to soar. The personal productivity is going to skyrocket. You're looking at this wrong. Okay, fine. And what they would do is they would come in and they would say, all right, let's assume that an average executive makes $100,000 a year, and we're going to divide that by 2,040 work hours a year. And they're really proud that they know it's 2,040, not exactly 2,000. So it makes it look like they're very consultanty. And they work that out and say, okay, so it's about $50 over. All right, fine. And you're going to save all this amazing time. And that's going to do it. All right, a couple problems with this. Number one, you want to guess what the average time savings is? 17 minutes. 17 minutes. Now, if you ask those executives what they did with the additional 17 minutes, they get the same look on their face as a dog who hears a squirrel outside. The head slightly turns to the side, the ear goes up, and they look like, why are you asking me this question? No concept. The answer tends to come back as something like other stuff. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know how to calculate the financial benefit of other stuff. So that's the first problem. Now, the second problem is 17 minutes isn't a whole lot of time regardless. And when you look at things like these amazing meeting summaries that it creates, and they are amazing meeting summaries, no one reads them. What they do is they use that as the excuse for why they didn't go to that meeting. Oh, they don't need to go to the meeting. They had an amazing meeting summary. But they never look at them. And what happens is someone else schedules another meeting in the slot where the meeting they didn't go to. So net, has my productivity improved? No. So no one has really thought through this whole process. If you are going to get this increased productivity, you can't set up a training like Excel macros and hope that something miraculous is going to happen. It needs to be much more like a journeyman or an apprenticeship approach, and people don't want to put in that time and effort. So it just doesn't work. So these are all the reasons why the ROI never came about. You really have to put in the work, and instead what people wanted was a magic trick. They wanted generative AI to be like a magic wand that I give to people, and miracles would occur, and it just doesn't work that way.
Okay, so that's good to know, Scott. you indicated that Microsoft Copilot is a perfect representation of the problem of GenAI. Can you explain why, Scott?
I think because it represents all a microcosm of all the problems. And by the way, Microsoft no longer claims that the big benefit is productivity. And one of the reasons why is a lot of companies came back and sued Microsoft saying I didn't get any productivity benefit. So now they don't argue it. But if you think about the fundamental problems of it looks amazing, it looks impressive, companies glommed onto it, and they didn't get any real benefits, they didn't think it through. So looks amazing, typical of all Gen AI products. Looks like a fundamental thing that everyone's going to do on a daily basis, typical of Gen AI. Looks easy to use, typical of Gen AI. But nobody thinks through how on a daily basis that's going to calculate to ROI, typical of Gen AI. So for all those reasons, it's really sort of the poster child of why it doesn't work the way people want to work. Now also, I want people to try an experiment just to illustrate this point. I want you to go into Microsoft Copilot, and I want you to go into Microsoft Word and try with a single prompt to get it to create a monthly calendar that looks like a wall calendar that you put on a wall that starts from a single date. I wish you luck. Yeah. Basic tasks, it completely does not understand. And you can end up spending an enormous amount of time to get it to do things that are very easy to do with a basic Microsoft template that it totally does not understand. It can be a very frustrating experience.
So, if you come to handling this issue, so Scott, do you suggest are there any ways around these issues to
There are
maintain?
some.
Yeah.
One of them is, what is the problem you're trying to solve? If, and people don't want to do that. They get seduced by the magic of whatever the product is. They don't want to think through what is the problem. If your fundamental problem is productivity, why is Gen AI the best solution for that? And what are the other things that you considered? Have you considered a time management program? How are you measuring productivity today? How are you going to measure any solution? So if your solution was something other than generative AI, how would you measure it? How would you grade its performance? How would you evaluate it? What other things are you considering? And what you'll find is people suddenly get really angry because they're like, what do you mean? They don't want to take those steps. If you get that type of reaction from the people proposing this, then you have a pretty good idea that the person is a generative AI junkie or devotee as opposed to someone who's actually trying to solve a problem. So that's concerning. So that should be a warning sign. The other thing is to say, okay, great, you want to buy this Gen AI product for your department. Fantastic. What part of your budget are you going to give up to be able to purchase this? And they tend to look at you funny. And what do you mean? I was like, well, why are you purchasing this thing? Oh, well, because there's going to be so much ROI. Great. Well, if there's going to be incremental ROI for your department, right? Well, then you're going to have either lower costs or higher revenue. So you're going to pay for the Gen AI with either the lower costs or the higher revenue your department is going to generate. So you should be able to pay for it out of that. So the money savings or the higher revenue, so pay for it out. So a part of your budget you're going to give up. And then, wait a minute. And then people start to really think about it. Because if they were going to hire an additional FTE, you would want to say, well, how are you going to justify this in your budget? And it really changes the mindset of folks. So that's one part. The other thing is the rule of thumb is you need to have in your budget, if you're going to make a Gen AI purchase, between 3 and 8 times the amount of your purchase for change management and upskilling, or you will lose money. 3 to 8 times the investment. So if you're spending $10,000 on your Gen AI software purchase, you need to have 3 to 8 times that amount for your change management and your training / upskilling. Now, if you're able to do that, take a step back and say, if I'm willing to spend that much money on Gen AI, would I rather spend that total amount on something else? Is Gen AI, am I so convinced that that total amount to Gen AI is going to be better than an investment in something else? If true, great. Now, there are use cases where Gen AI is the correct answer. So, for example, there are use cases where it has proved to be really successful in automating parts of software development. There are use cases where it can be really helpful for onboarding customer service phone representatives, can cut onboarding time by like 40%. That's a good use case. There are cases where if you have a huge backlog in document processing, that can be a good use case. But you probably could have done that in old NLP processes, but okay, there's a potential there. All I'm saying is, if you think about revenue expense before, revenue expense after, and if Gen AI is the best solution for that, go do Gen AI. But just because we add the words artificial intelligence does not change the fundamental laws of business. Think about that before you pull the trigger.
Yes, that is really awesome, Scott. So, in this context, I want to ask one more associated question. I see many students are entering into this artificial intelligence area. Now, I see so many students opting for PG in the area of artificial intelligence, UG in the area of artificial intelligence. They are doing the research in the area of AI just because the buzzword AI is there. So, do you think it is good for the current generation? Is it good that everyone comes into in this area, or they going to get the jobs in this area? So, how do they mold themselves to get the jobs if they are into AI?
I think that artificial intelligence is going to become part of most jobs. So, but the question is, being able to write is part of most jobs. Should everyone get a degree in literature? Maybe not. Being able to speak clearly and represent your ideas is going to be part of most jobs. Should everyone get a degree in public speaking? Being able to use a keyboard for most jobs is required. Should everybody get a degree in typing? See what I'm saying? It's a fundamental skill. So you should definitely have skills in using a lot of different AI tools. But there's going to be a limit in how much we can contain. Also, one of the things that people are not talking about is a lot of current Gen AI tools are hitting their limits, meaning that they are using up all of the available context and content that's available on the web. And they're sort of running out of new material to use. So I think that everyone should have basic competency in how to use an LLM. I think everyone should have a basic competency in using a lot of different tools. That doesn't mean that everybody should go out and major in this. Also realize that everyone is trying to major in this. So yes, there are a lot of job opportunities at the moment, but there's also a ton of people majoring in it. So if there are 10 times as many jobs, but there are 50 times as many applicants, you're not really helping yourself. because you can end up in a situation where you've actually made it harder to be able to get a job because there are still going to be too many applicants for the jobs that are opening up. So, no, I would not recommend that.
Yes. So, who is the real Gen AI engineer, Scott, as per you? Is the person who is using the tool, or the person who is trying to generate it? Who is the real Gen AI engineer, as per you?
I think that I would be an idiot if I tried to answer that question because let me give an example. I think that if you looked at what the huge trends were 12 months ago, for example, RAG engineering was hugely important. RAG was all the rage, and everyone was running into how do we get more RAG engineers. Well, now there are at least 3 products on the market right now that allow your prompt to be up to 1 megabyte. Well, if you can have a prompt that's up to 1 megabyte, do you really need RAG anymore? There's a lot of argument that maybe you don't, because if I can have a prompt that's full 1 megabyte, do I really need an entire RAG system? Maybe not. I'm arguing that probably not, because in 2 years you can probably send your prompt with a good deal more than 1 megabyte. So do I need an entire RAG system? Probably not. 2 years ago, prompt engineer was all the rage, and I saw jobs that were out there for $600,000 being paid for a prompt engineer. Try and find a good prompt engineer job now, you're in trouble. So I'm not so sure that it is a great idea to say who is the right fit for a Gen AI engineer right now. Also remember that I just mentioned that one of the biggest use cases for Gen AI is software engineering. So how much need are we going to have for a Gen AI engineer? And the answer is I don't know. I'm not saying we're going to have a huge need or we're not going to have a huge need. It could be ridiculously big. It could also be ridiculously small. So betting your entire career on where things are going to be 4 years from now, it's a risky bet. I'm not sure I would want to put my wager on the rest of my life on what's going to happen in 4 years when everything keeps changing every 90 days.
That's awesome. So, how do you see the future of Gen AI as on date, Scott? So, you have seen so many things in your career. Now you are seeing Gen AI. So, how will be the future in the coming next 5 to 10 years?
I think that the future of Gen AI, um, I will use a quote from Yogi Berra, which was, predictions are hard to make, especially about the future. But I think that the real untapped area of Gen AI is user experience. And I think that's what most people are missing. The real advantage of Gen AI that I see is that it democratizes access to technology. I think that the days of believing that everyone's going to learn to memorize a stack of 15 Python books to be able to access technology are over. Now, that is not me saying that we're not going to need software developers. I do not believe that. I think we still need to have high quality software architects, engineers, designers, and developers. What I'm saying is that the need for everyone to be able to be a software developer to be able to access technology is going away. And I think that's a good thing. I think the beauty of Gen AI is it's going to remove a lot of barriers on the front end so that more and more people are going to be able to do more and more things with technology that was not possible before. And I think that's a beautiful thing. More and more people are going to be able to use more and more aspects of technology that couldn't happen before. I think that's the area that is still untapped. And I think that is the biggest benefit of Gen AI that is still yet to be fully taken advantage of. Um, I'm really looking forward to that, for more and more people to be able to do more and more things with computers and technology. That is very different from saying we don't need to have software developers. But I think that we've been so excited about, having dancing penguins across our screens that we have really lost that aspect. And as we start to use up the amount of information that we can use for new LLMs, I think people are going to slow down and go, wait a minute, I think we missed this piece over here.
Yeah. So that's really awesome, Scott. So it's really great to have you here, and it was nice talking to you. I have learnt a lot. Hopefully, everyone who
Thank
listens
you.
to this, yeah, most welcome. Hopefully, everyone who listens this will get lot of great insights. And really, from my bottom of the heart, I thank you for accepting my invitation and joining this podcast and sharing your valuable insights. Thank you so much, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Scott. It was really great to have you. So, all the viewers who watched this awesome discussion, definitely I hope that it will benefit you a lot. If you really like it, please do like, comment, share it to your friends, and do subscribe to my channel. Thank you so
And
much.
come follow me on LinkedIn.
Yes. So Scott has so many followers in the LinkedIn. He's very popular personality. So thank you once again, Scott. Have a
You
great
bet.
time.
Take care.
Thank you.